Bringing our panel now to discuss, I believe we have Peter Lamage joining us. He's a Republican strategist. He's an attorney. Also, Richard Roth. He's a Democratic strategist and founder and partner of the Roth Law Firm. Thank you both for coming on here. Richard, I'll give you the first crack at this one here. Emerald reporting a possibility of another stimulus package down the pipes and perhaps more Americans getting that big check being sent out. Of course, this all gets decided in July. Based on what you've seen and your thoughts on this, does America need another stimulus check?
There's no question that America needs another stimulus. The problem I'm having is that this should have been passed in May. And they can look and they can look and they can look, but Hassett, Kudlow, and Mnuchin have not yet come up, and the White House, with a solid package. And the problem we have is that the clock is ticking. We have the Senate and the House will be on vacation in August. There's been no indication they're going to actually come back and work. So we have really a month. We have 1 month in which to draft and legislate an act which is going to help manufacturing, entertainment, transportation, distressed companies, states. We're really running out of time here. And what's a little frustrating is that the House actually passed legislation back weeks ago. And we have the White House and the Senate waiting, with McConnell saying he's not going to be more than $1 trillion. But even he's at odds with the White House, because now Trump is saying it's got to be at least $2 trillion. So they got to get together and they got to come up with something soon, because these industries just can't survive in the status that they're in.
Peter, weigh in on this for me. What are your thoughts?
I think the bottom line eventually is going to be that Americans, they do not need handouts. They need jobs. We have to give the incentive to the people to return back to work. The states are going to have to reopen and allow businesses to come back. Instead of declaring bankruptcies and leaving the businesses, they are going to have to reestablish themselves, get the people back to work. I mean, eventually, if the president decides to sign another stimulus, if you will, for the pharmaceutical companies to come back to the United States, that would be an incentive for them to come back, produce what we need to produce over here, and create jobs here. But as far as giving people another stimulus, giving them money for encouraging them not to go back to work, I think eventually it's going to backfire, because Americans, they want to go back to work. The states are going to have to reopen. The states are going to have to allow people to take a risk, allow businesses to take a risk. And eventually we have to go back to that flourishing economy that we had 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And we can do it again. It is not the money, the stimulus that were provided. What businesses need, they want to make sure that, especially Northeast, that the governors allow them to reopen, get rid of certain regulations and restrictions that they have, allow them to create jobs and prosperity, because America stands for jobs, creation, prosperity, freedom, and liberty. And the governors, especially Northeast, are denying that to businesses and individuals at this point.
Mark Halperin is going to be joining us, a political analyst. Mark, stay on the line. I want to play something for you, then get your response. We'll start with you, because the shutdowns, they're not completely over, as you know. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo actually threatening to force people back into quarantine because some are not following social distancing guidelines. Here's that.
If the local governments, if we have a high number of violations of the policy, which is tantamount to a high likelihood of the spread of the virus, and the local governments are not monitoring, policing, doing the compliance, yes, there is a very real possibility that we would roll back the reopening in those areas. The only alternative would be to pause the entire reopening.
All right, so that's going to be hard to hear, because we've been in lockdown in New York for 3 months, some 78 days officially, but roughly right there around 3 months. Mark, how serious is this? How serious do you think New Yorkers would take another lockdown? And also keep in mind, when you respond here, this is over an outcry. The governor's response after seeing people out and about in the streets, drinking, being outside of restaurants, as we see here. This is one part of town, East Village, that you're seeing people outside. This is not after the protests that you have seen with way bigger crowds outside. It's about this one here, slowing traffic on this specific street, also protesters shutting down streets. Again, you're only hearing this from the governor after what you're seeing here on your screen. Mark, you could respond.
You know, I talked to people all over the country all day, and I found one guy who told me that in his area, people wear masks and social distance. It's just incredible how little compliance there is, not just in New York. And Long Island, but across the country. And I think we're going to have to get through the pandemic with this being the reality. Governor Cuomo saw some pictures and got some reports, and so he's exercised about it. But I think it's futile. I think after the long period, not just in New York, but around the country, people want to be back outside. They're going to want to take on the level of risk they're comfortable assuming, even though they could be impacting others. That's just going to be the way the country gets through this, as best I can tell.
Richard, from a political standpoint, just walk me through it. I know you walked the line on this with me here. The governor, again, harsh response here, threatening a lockdown after he saw a few people out there out and about not adhering to social distancing guidelines. You did not hear from him with the thousands of protesters marching down the streets of New York. Why?
Yeah, no, listen, I think Mark's right. The bottom line is that this is going to be the new reality. We are going to have people who are assembling when they shouldn't be, but it is the job of the governor, it is the job of every governor to try to reduce the amount of sickness, the amount of hospital infestation, the amount of contracted diseases. New York State right now has done the best in the country. We are, New York State, I'm in New York, I think so is one of our panel members, has actually the lowest amount of increase in the country after we had 800, 900 deaths a day. So what we're doing is working. I'm not necessarily saying it's Cuomo, it's the people. And so all he's saying is, if it's working, let's not break it. And I think we're going to have to deal with the reality where people are going to be out and about, and he may very well have to start looking at licenses of bars and restaurants and telling them, if you don't limit the amount of people, we will shut you down or we will do it for you, because we can't have those numbers go up. The southern part of the country is now undergoing what New York went through months ago. They're in their first wave. As far as the other issue goes, what Peter said, I agree with Peter. We should not give money away, but these industries are suffering. We need to give money to companies because they can't afford rent, they can't afford insurance, they can't afford employees. So there's really two crises going on here. One is the economic, and the second is the virus. And it's a very tough balancing in light of the fact that the weather's is getting better, and we're doing everything we can to keep the economy vibrant, but yet keep the spread of the virus down. It's a tough balance, very tough.
I'll leave it right there. Richard Roth, thank you. Also, Peter Lamage, Mark Halper, we appreciate the time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
We do have some breaking news to get to. The Supreme Court has ruled that workers cannot be fired for being gay or transgender. SCOTUS ruled that the landmark civil rights law protects gay and lesbian people from discrimination in employment, which is a resounding victory for LGBT